Hi, and welcome back to Map the Maze. So today in Summer Book Club, I wanted to share with you a book which I physically have with me, which feels unusual at the moment. I'm not quite sure where I'm hiding them all. This is a book that I think I really started reading last year. So it's called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And it's a little bit of an unusual choice for a family mediator to have in a book club. The reason I'm including it is I have this conversation with people, not often, but sometimes. And essentially, this book is really about if there has been a crisis, if there has been a point of fracture, how do you decide if you're going to stay in the relationship and try and find a way forward together as a couple, or how do you think about leaving? And if you decide to try and stay, what should that look like? What could that look like? So they talk about that period of trying to figure out, is this relationship going to survive, whatever the crisis is, whatever the events were, as a controlled separation. And one of the things that I do in mediation is sometimes, not often, but sometimes, work with people who are in this position, who have had the crisis, who have had an event occur, which has been the sort of the warning sign, the alert has gone up that their relationship is in difficulty. And maybe this is a difficulty they're not going to be able to overcome, but they have decided they want to try and reconcile. They want to work at it. So as part of a controlled separation, if those people saw me in mediation, we'd be talking about how will you physically separate? If so, what does that look like? What will you do about money during this period? How will expenses be met? What will happen to bank accounts and income? If there are children, how will you make sure that the children get to see each of their parents, that both of you are involved with them so that they don't feel that they have lost mum or dad? How do you talk to children about what's happening? Do you explain exactly how you'll be working to try and rebuild? Do you let them know that separation could be one of the outcomes? And also, how do you behave during that separation? How do you commit to counseling? How do you commit to not seeing third parties? How do you let the other person know if it's not going to work out? What is that strategy for giving notice if in fact the reconciliation isn't going to happen? How do you do that? And so all of those questions are things that we can deal with in mediation and put in place an arrangement between the couple. So I'm not a counselor and would never, I presume, to do that type of work. So typically people come to marriage mediation, we put in place the practical arrangements, the logistical arrangements, even down to things like how many sessions do you commit to go to see the marriage counselor? But the work of trying to rebuild that relationship will be done, I'm guessing, separately, obviously with reflection and maybe working with individual counselors, but also with the marriage counselor, the relationship counselor that the parties are working with. My role is really to try and give them the space to build a safe, controlled space to enable that work to happen. And I say it's not often. It is really rewarding work that I don't think anybody works as a family mediator because they want families to separate. What we want is for families to be happy, to be comfortable, to be okay, to be able to move forward with life. But working on marriage mediation is something that's really moving. Often people have come because really terrible things have happened and they are trying to find a way forward together, which can be very difficult when really all they want to do is stay apart. And so it can be very emotional work, but really interesting. And I would say if you are in that position and you're thinking, I don't know whether I should stay or if I should leave this relationship, I don't know if there is enough for us to build on, I'm trying to figure out what that would look like, I completely recommend this book. So it's really based around the practical side of what does that controlled separation look like? What does that time mean? What should be happening during that period? So if you are thinking, we have had a crisis, I'm not sure what to do, I think this is a great book. And if you're interested in sort of this aspect at all about reconciliation, about what that looks like, I think this is a helpful book for that as well. So that's my first, I guess, marriage mediation recommendation for the Summer Book Club. And I will put the link below in the description. It's not as much of a entertaining read, I would say, as last week, Mistakes Were Made, but it's a really thoughtful and considered and empathetic look at what can it mean if there has been a crisis. How might you deal with that? That divorce, separation is not the only path forward. So something to think about and something to read if it's something that's applicable to you. And I will see you next week for the next in the Summer Book Club. Bye-bye.